After a judge ruled on Friday that Kesha could not be released from her contract with Dr. Luke during her sexual and physical abuse trial against the producer, many of the biggest names in music have come out in support of her on Twitter as well as financially. Now, as you might remember, Kesha first sued Dr. Luke in California in October in 2014, accusing him of using drugs and alcohol to commit sexual assault against her while wielding his power over her career to keep her silent. Now, rallying behind the hashtag Free Kesha social media campaign, female musicians including Lady Gaga, Lorde, Miley Cyrus, Fiona Apple, Ariana Grande, and Kelly Clarkson, both Miley Cyrus and Kelly Clarkson have songs with Dr. Luke, have voiced support in recent days for Kesha. Further, Taylor Swift said that she would donate $250,000 to Kesha to help with any of her financial needs during this trying time. Now, as I mentioned, the outpouring on Twitter came after a judge in state Supreme Court in Manhattan ruled on Friday that Kesha could not be released from her recording contract with Dr. Luke and Sony Music Entertainment while the case plays out. Now, a lawyer for Kesha argued that her career is at a standstill because of Kesha's refusal to record with Dr. Luke. Her contract with Dr. Luke's publishing company requires that he produce at least 6 songs on each of her albums. Now, a lawyer for Dr. Luke said Kesha is already free to record and release music without working with Dr. Luke as a producer if she doesn't want to. Any claim that she isn't free is a myth. Now, I want to clarify this last comment. So she is allowed to release music without Dr. Luke, but it wouldn't be under Sony's name, so that would obviously prevent her from, having better publicity and things like that. So this is clearly financially inhibiting her quite a bit.
Okay, so obviously a serious story, some serious allegations, but nonetheless, I'm going to start goofy, of course. So Dr. Luke is not a cool name. So I know that it is an effort to be cool because there's doctor in front of it, like Dr. Dre and stuff. Dr. Luke makes me think of General Hospital. So already we're off on a bad footing.
It's not a bad name if you're a dermatologist.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, I'm going to see Dr. Luke. Good for you. He's great at
clear up that thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like, oh man, that guy's so badass. Dr. Fred, Dr. Luke, not buying it. Okay.
Yo, Dr. Kyle's producing my album, man.
So hip.
Yeah. This part.
Yeah.
Yes, Ben, very nicely done. Furthermore, I don't know why all these years Kesha has been posing as Sam Shocker to host Pop Trigger for us. But now I have found out, if I can see her picture again, I mean, how is she, I don't know. That's Sam Shocker from Pop Trigger.
I mean,
They both have blonde hair.
They're tall, they have that lean face.
Sam is Kesha looks like she hasn't slept in some time.
Yeah, I mean, Sam is a more attractive, sorry, Kesha, no disrespect, who slept every once in a while. Okay, so anyways, now on to the serious stuff. Now, look, this is tough to adjudicate in the press, right? I know we make judgments on stuff like this all the time, but we got to figure out who's right, who's wrong. Just because someone accuses someone of a horrible thing, in this case, sexually, physically, verbally, and emotionally abusing her, doesn't mean she's right. She never went to court on this. There's no criminal charges, etc. Now, so how are we to know? Well, a lot of people who work with Dr. Luke apparently are on her side, including a lot of female artists. To me, Kelly Clarkson was pretty, not determinative, that's too strong, but it was a strong indication that perhaps Kesha might be telling the truth here, because Kelly Clarkson's work with Dr. Luke actually produced one of her biggest hits. Yeah. Right? And she came out and was like, now, I don't want to say anything bad about anybody, so I won't say anything at all about Dr. Luke. That means he's that kind of guy, right? So now that doesn't mean he's that kind of guy and innuendo puts you in jail. But that's not the conversation we're having here. The conversation is, should she be forced into, doing her musical recordings with this guy who has done what she claims are terrible things in the past, and a lot of people are on her side on that, right? Right. Now, the judge says it is a valid contract. It was, thoroughly negotiated. It's not like, oh, golly gee, I didn't know what I was doing, I entered into a contract. So it's not an easy case in that regard either. But it appears that almost all the artists at this point are on one side saying, let her go, let her go, let her do whatever she's going to do.
I just feel like there are other ways if all she wanted was to get out of a contract, like there are other ways to do that than to claim something this big. Do you know what I mean? Like I think that this is, you know, from the support that she's getting from people who have had interactions with him. Obviously, any woman who claims this, I am inclined to believe until proven otherwise. And frankly, and this is obviously no judgment on the case or just more on his character, is I used to be a hostess at a restaurant. And we had a lot of celebrity clientele, and he came in once and was the biggest douchebag I've ever encountered in my entire life. He was like, came in, demanded a table for 10 people, like during our biggest hour. I was like, sorry, we're totally.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. And he just like walked right in the restaurant, sat down, started pulling chairs from other tables, like total. And like Jeremy Piven was a frequent client who's like known as being a total douchebag, and Dr. Luke way surpassed him.
Mm-hmm. And a person that feels...
I like the idea of Jeremy Piven watching this video and be like,
how did I get thrown under a bus here? Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. So a person that feels that entitled to everything might feel entitled to other things. I know it's, you know, look, it's just one anecdote. And when we say we have a certain opinion on something, that doesn't mean we think anybody should go to jail over it. If if there are proceedings for that, whether it's criminal charges, civil charges, et cetera. We're just expressing an opinion based on the evidence that we have in public here.
By the way, coming in and taking over and pulling chairs and making your own table, it's such a Dr. Luke move, you know. You know who, of course, like let's leave the facts of the assault of any alleged assault, because we just don't know, right? And yes, it is incredibly unlikely. It's not impossible that desperation could get you to make that move if you can't try to get out of the contract other ways. Like it's not like it's never happened, but I'm with you. I'm inclined to believe anybody who would put themselves through this just to, so with the preponderance, so with our doubt, with us doubting that she would make it up, Sony needs to step up. And there's some indication in the story that they might, because Dr. Luke isn't more powerful than Sony. And Sony doesn't have to fire him. They don't have to, but they have the ability to make everybody whole and take a little bit of a loss in the process. Or keep her under contract and say, we're going to keep you under contract, but you're working with Dr. Kyle. He's awesome. You know, you go work with somebody else. But Sony could step in and say, no, we're letting you go. We understand. Or, you know, and investigate it first. Take a couple of weeks. Find out. But if you find out other women who substantiated, if you find out that maybe some of these other women are substantiated for another reason, or that she told people at the time, or any of the things that normal investigations do, and Sony can hire serious investigators to do this, then they find out, and then they make this deal, and they do the right thing and let her go. They can end this fight.
And if they find out that he's done it a bunch of times,
then you end him.
Right. Then I would think twice about doing a deal with that guy. And in this case, I'm actually already a little surprised that Sony would withstand this kind of really bad PR when it would have been easier to say, hey, you know what? Let's figure out a different deal here. Have somebody else produce it.
Her attorney's Mark Garagos, you know, who's obviously is in many high-profile cases and a big-time California attorney. So the judge said you're asking the court to decimate a contract that was heavily negotiated and is typical for the industry, she said. However, Sony indicated at the hearing that the label would be open to having Kesha record outside of Dr. Luke's direct purview.
About time.
And so in an interview after the motion, Garagos said, obviously, I wanted a complete separation. This is a positive first step to get her back in the studio. So that's an indication that Sony might be making some moves here.